Let us move ahead and take up the question for practicing this kind of situations. That will be question number 6. It says, if the consumption function is C equals to 250 plus 0.8y and I equals to 300, find out equilibrium level of Y, C and S. Now, this is going to be very simple after the understanding of the formulas that you have just made, and the multiplier when we apply, that is 1 divided by 1 minus B, that is the multiplier, investment multiplier, and A is the minimum level of consumption or the constant consumption, and I bar is the minimum level of investment, or we can call it as autonomous investment. So let us define the variables over here, and when you define the variables, don't forget B is the constant that indicates the marginal propensity to consume, which is 0.8 in the given example, and all other variables and constants are defined very clearly. Let us move ahead and write further. You can now put up the values of the variables and constants in the equation of Y, and you can find the value of Y as 2750. The consumption function is given as A plus B into Y. When you substitute the values, you get the value of consumption as exactly 2450. And we know one thing, savings will be income minus consumption. So you may define the variables over here. S stands for savings, Y stands for income, and C stands for consumption. So the amount of savings will be 300. Let us move ahead and take up the next question. That will be question number 9. Let us read this question. In an economy, investment expenditure is increased by 400 crores and marginal propensity to consume is 0.8. Calculate the total increase in income and savings. Now, first of all, you should understand one thing very well. If I know what is the investment expenditure which is increasing by 400, and I know the marginal propensity to consume, I can first of all find the marginal propensity to save, and I can also find the investment multiplier. Then connecting the investment multiplier with the increase in investment expenditure, we can easily work out the amount of increase in income. So let us move ahead and try solving this. First thing what you do is write the formula of multiplier and define all the variables over here. K is the multiplier, MPC is the marginal propensity to consume, that is 0.8, and when you put up this value, what you get as investment multiplier, which will be 5 times. And you know one more thing, that investment multiplier is actually a function of delta Y divided by delta I, that is change in income divided by change in investment. So let us define these variables as well, and what we get now is, with the change in the amount of investment, you can now find out the change in the amount of income. So your delta Y value will be 5 times 400, that will be 2000, and because the values were given in crores, you will write that as 2000 crores. So total increase in income will be rupees 2000 crores. Let us move ahead and find out the amount of savings. So marginal propensity to save is 1 minus the marginal propensity to consume, and that will give you the ratio as 0.2. That is 1 minus 0.8 will be obviously 0.2, and you know how to define these variables. And marginal propensity to save is given as this function, that is delta S divided by delta Y, and you know this we have discussed already. In fact, the shorter way to deal with this could be much easier. I'll show you one simple thing, that the equilibrium economy will always convey one fact, that the amount of savings is always matching with the amount of investment. So actually in this question, when you solve this by taking the increase in investment as 400 crores, it was implied that increase in savings will also be 400 crores. So you can do it this way, or you may just write a one single line answer, that in an equilibrium economy, the increase in investment will correspond to increase in savings, and therefore if increase in an equilibrium economy, the amount of increase in savings will always match with the amount of increase in investment. So considering that fact, you may just write one single line answer, that will be if the investment has increased by rupees 400 crores, it is implied that savings will also increase by rupees 400 crores. But this kind of calculation based answer could be little more convincing to the examiner. That is why we have preferred solving it this way, and in fact in your ICAI study material as well, the solution is given exactly this way. Let us move ahead and take up the next question, that will be question number 10. Let us read this question. An increase in investment by 400 crores leads to increase in national income by 1600 crores. Calculate marginal propensity to consume. Now this is a question even a kid can solve without any difficulty. You should just know one thing, that delta y is 1600 crores and delta I is 400 crores. With this you can compute investment multiplier, and inverse of investment multiplier will be marginal propensity to save, and marginal propensity to consume will be 1 minus marginal propensity to save. So how to present the solution? Look at this. As I told you, the investment multiplier is delta y divided by delta I. So you may define these variables and put up the values and compute the value of the multiplier, which comes to 4 times. And we know the other function of the multiplier, which is 1 divided by 1 minus marginal propensity to consume. So when you substitute these values, you will be able to get the value of MPC, that is marginal propensity to consume. Marginal propensity to save will be 1 by 4, and marginal propensity to consume will be 1 minus 1 by 4 or 1 minus 0.25, and that will give you 0.75. So this will be your final answer, that marginal propensity to consume is 0.75. Let us move ahead and take up the next question, that will be question number 11. Let us read this question. In an economy, investment is increased by 600 crores. If marginal propensity to consume is 0.6, calculate the total increase in income and consumption expenditure. So let us move ahead and try solving this. I am sure you must have tried out all these calculations. Only thing what is left over is the formality to write down the solution in your notebooks after confirming what exactly is the correct answer. But more important thing what I wanted you to do is to write up the solution on your own correctly. So the investment multiplier in this case will be 2.5, and then connecting the same with the other form of equation of investment multiplier, you will be able to figure out the missing value, and in this case delta y will be 1500 crores. Let us move ahead and now deal with the consumption part, and you know MPC is delta C divided by delta Y, that is the marginal propensity to consume. Let us define these variables, and we know what is marginal propensity to consume. We also know what is the change in income. So easily you can find out what will be the change in consumption. Change in consumption will be 60% of the change in income. So 60% of 1500 will give you 900 crores. So increase in consumption will be by rupees 900 crores. So make sure that you got this answer correct. Let us move ahead and take up yet another question for practice, that will be question number 12. Now I am not even going to read this question for you. You have to read it, interpret it and try solving it. Do it as a rough work and see whether you can get the correct answer. Let us see whether you got it right or not. The investment multiplier formula, when you put up, you just need one thing clear over here. What will be the marginal propensity to consume? If that is given as 0.6, marginal propensity to save will be 0.4, and inverse of that will be the investment multiplier, that will be basically 2.5 times. And the other function of investment multiplier is change in income divided by change in investment, where multiplier value you have already found, change in income you have to yet determine, and change in investment is known to you. And finally when you work it out, you get the change in income as 2.5 times the change in investment, that will be 250 crores. Let us move ahead And now what I am showing, you don't have to write in your notebook. If you can recall, earlier you have already written in the first lecture something about aggregate demand function. This you have already written in the first lecture. Aggregate demand function is total planned expenditure. So aggregate demand will always be equal to C plus I, where AD stands for aggregate demand, that is total planned expenditure. C stands for aggregate demand for consumer goods, and I stands for aggregate demand for investment goods. As I told you, you don't have to write this. What I want you to now write is the next function, that is the aggregate supply function. I have just brought this again into your notice so that you can recollect what was aggregate demand function when you are parallelly about to learn what will be the aggregate supply function. So let us learn what will be aggregate supply. Planned aggregate supply is the total supply of goods and services which firms in a national economy plan on selling during a specified period of time. It is equal to national income of the economy, which is either consumed or saved. So AS, that is aggregate supply, will be C plus S. C will be basically standing for the overall consumption or the total consumption, and S will be standing for total savings. So if you logically understand, C is a variable which is found in aggregate demand as well as aggregate supply. So when you learn about equilibrium, aggregate demand will always be equal to aggregate supply. That means over there C plus I should match with C plus S, but C is common in both the sides. So actually in an equilibrium level economy, S will be equal to I. S stands for savings and I stands for investment. Let us move ahead and continue writing further. Two sector model of national income determination. The equilibrium part, the equilibrium level of income and output in Keynesian framework is that level at which aggregate demand, that is C plus I, and aggregate supply, that is C plus S, or output are equal. So C plus I equals to C plus S, and as I told you, C being common in both the sides, you can eliminate that and conclude that I equals to S. And when it comes to defining the variables, C is the consumption of consumable goods, and I is for investment, S is for savings, and E is the level of equilibrium or simply equilibrium point. And one more variable which is though not found here, but it will be mentioned ahead, which will be Y, and Y stands for overall income, or you may also call it national income. Let us move ahead and continue writing further. At equilibrium point, C plus I equals to C plus S. So aggregate demand C plus I equals to aggregate supply C plus S. That also means S equals to I. So consumers consumption plan should be equal to producers consumption plan. Producers plan to invest should be equal to households plan to save. So aggregate demand should be equal to output, and that is what we call as income. Let us move ahead and now deal with the situation where C plus I will be greater than C plus S. So we have seen already, when C plus I equals to C plus S, it is a case of aggregate demand being equal to aggregate supply, which means it is the point of equilibrium. Here C plus I is greater than C plus S, that means the actual demand is more than equilibrium. So excess demand makes business to sell more than what they currently produce. Unexpected sales would decrease in inventories investment. Rising production by hiring more workers. Increase in nation's aggregate income and aggregate demand and supply will be equal. It means an increase in aggregate spending makes the aggregate demand schedule shift upward. As a result, equilibrium point would shift upward, causing an increase in the national income. So I am going to explain you this whole point along with the other side of the story. Alright friends, as I told you, the understanding of this particular matter is yet to be done, but let us first write the other side, that will be the opposite situation where C plus I is less than C plus S. Here we will say if actual demand is less than equilibrium, supply exceeds demand. Business firms would be unable to sell the output because the demand is less. Larger inventory investment resulting in increase in actual inventory and tendency for output to fall, which will decrease the aggregate income, and again demand and supply will be equal. It means decrease in aggregate spending makes the aggregate demand schedule shift downward. As a result, the equilibrium point would shift downward, causing a decrease in the national income. Actually, it is easier to understand this part. That is why I first of all did not explain you the earlier part. Let me explain this part first. You know, when we find this scenario where C plus I is less than C plus S, that means the demand is less than the supply, correct? In other words, we can say supply exceeds demand. Now just imagine that there is too much supply of goods and services in the market, but there is not plenty of demand. What will happen? The goods will remain unsold, right? That is why we say the business firm would be unable to sell output, and this will increase in the actual inventory. This will simply cause increase in actual inventory, and there will be larger fund blockage in the inventory. That means there will be pile up of inventories, there will be lack of demand and abundant supply. Obviously, the supplier would notice this fact. What do you think supplier would do? Will supplier continue to produce more and more? The answer is obviously not. Supplier will not produce more. As a result, there will be tendency for output to fall. I am sure you are getting the point that output will decline in this case, and when the output declines, the need for the factors will also get reduced. So now less labor employment, less usage of land, capital and other resources. As a result, the income that would be coming in the hands of factor would also decline, and because the factors have less income, means less income coming in the hands of household, the demand for goods and service will decline. Now this will obviously cause a reduction in the factor income, and therefore the demand and supply would again come back to kind of equilibrium. But what will happen? The equilibrium point will shift downward, which will finally result into a decrease in the national income. So this is basically a kind of recessionary situation that we have observed. From recessionary situation, when you land up at equilibrium, you will eventually find that the national income declines. On the other side, if the earlier case was there, exact opposite effect would be observed, where the national income will actually tend to increase. So in this scenario, the equilibrium point shifts downward. In the earlier scenario, the equilibrium point shifts upward.